This is the Oppo Find X8 Ultra, the new Chinese flagship that's trying to become the iPhone of Android while still keeping its own unique identity. Oppo's engineers have put all their top-of-the-line innovations into this smartphone. A flat, high-quality display, powerful hardware, 5 camera modules on the back, including a unique spectral sensor, a very pleasant and well-optimized interface, and a great vibration motor, plus an incredibly fast ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, 2 new buttons, and a body that somehow reminds you of both Samsung and iPhone at the same time. But is it really that good? Is it better than its direct competitors? These are exactly the questions we'll try to answer together with you in this video. And as usual, I suggest we take a look at the strengths and weaknesses of this smartphone. The first advantage is, of course, the cameras. This is probably the main reason to even consider this smartphone and what really makes it stand out from the rest. And right now, I'm not even talking about the overall quality of the cameras, but rather about their variety and the versatility of the main camera module in general. In this aspect, Oppo has even surpassed Samsung's Galaxy Ultra series by putting 5 sensors in the main camera module. And yes, guys, there really are 5 of them, since the spectral sensor is also a camera with 2 megapixels. Now let's briefly go through each module so we have an idea of what they are. The main 1-inch Sony LYT900 camera has an f1.8 aperture and, of course, optical stabilization. It captures images with depth and detail. During the day, HDR works precisely without overexposure. The photos look lively, with beautiful depth. Even in sunset lighting, the white balance is almost always spot on. Video shot with Oppo's main camera during the day also turn out to be quite high quality. The footage stays smooth even when walking or running, thanks to stable shooting. The ultra-wide camera here is the Samsung JN5 with autofocus, a 120-degree field of view, and an f2.0 aperture. And it impressed as well. Wide angle, good sharpness at the edges, excellent autofocus. Surprisingly, it delivers a decent result even in low light. 3x telephoto LYT700C. This versatile module is great for both macro shots and portraits. The sensor is very light sensitive, so it works even at night, which expands its range of uses. 6x zoom LYT600. Here, Oppo really put in some serious work. The new OIS-shaped mechanism made it possible to achieve higher clarity in distant shots. Shooting buildings and distant details is at a very high level, but there's a catch. The minimum focusing distance is about 1 meter. It won't shoot any closer than that. Although, on the other hand, with such an awesome 3x telephoto lens, you don't really need to, so I wouldn't make a big deal out of it. And then there's the spectral sensor. It works together with the new processing chip and helps to reproduce colors more accurately, especially in tricky lighting conditions. Honestly, its effect is a bit overrated for now. The image often shifts toward red and orange tones, especially when shooting people. Let's put this in the plus column for now, because I think Oppo will fix this with future updates. But the very presence of this sensor is already a cool thing. If Oppo does manage to turn this sensor into a fully functional tool, the smartphone will really come alive and take even better photos. Oppo especially shines when it comes to portrait photography. I really enjoyed taking portraits with this smartphone, and the shots turned out genuinely great. I was very impressed with how the Find X8 Ultra performs in this mode. Another plus, in my opinion, is the Master Mode. There you get full manual controls, shooting in JPEG Max, and the ability to create your own presets. For those who love manual photography, it's a real treat. However, in Auto Mode, the exposure and skin tones sometimes get thrown off. But again, there's hope for a quick update soon. The front camera on the smartphone also does a pretty good job with photos. We get fairly natural-looking shots. Compared to other Chinese phones, the colors here really aren't as saturated and bright. But for people who prefer more natural colors, that's actually a plus. Portrait selfies on the Oppo also look really interesting, and the ability to switch between 0.8x, 1x, and 2x gives you more freedom in choosing your composition. The photo and video zoom on the smartphone was also a pleasant surprise. The zoom goes up to 120x, and the image still stays fairly sharp. Night shots with zoom look especially impressive. For such conditions, the Oppo produces very little noise. As for additional photo modes, there's plenty to brag about here too. Long exposure works flawlessly. Night shots of the moon also turn out really cool. There are various filters and retouching tools available in the arsenal. Besides the cameras, the Find X8 Ultra also performs excellently in everyday use. It's genuinely enjoyable to use as a smartphone. The screen on the new model is very high quality, with minimal PWM flicker and wide wide viewing angles. It doesn't tire your eyes even after long periods of reading or watching videos. The smartphone's body is thin and neat, with shapes that almost copy the iPhone. It's obvious that the engineers were inspired by its design. The Oppo feels comfortable in your hand, and it's a pleasure to interact with. On European Wi-Fi networks, it consistently maintains speeds close to the maximum. But as for how the smartphone performs when transferring data over the mobile network, we'll discuss that in the cons section. I really do have something to say about that. Under the hood, we've got a top-tier Snapdragon chip, which delivers instant interface response and confidently handles heavy apps and games. The under-display fingerprint scanner is ultrasonic and works literally in a flash, and the stereo speakers produce clear, immersive sound. And all of this together makes the Find X8 Ultra a truly comfortable smartphone for everyday use. Well, we've given it plenty of praise. Now let's talk about the downsides. On to the cons. Guys, did you notice that when I was talking about the pros, I mostly mentioned the photo capabilities of Oppo's cameras? That wasn't by accident, because when it comes to video, the smartphone really disappointed me in many ways. But first, let's make it clear, overall, the camera is still pretty raw in terms of software. With the current firmware, there are sometimes issues with exposure and color tone. And unfortunately, I'm talking about both photos and videos here. For example, the video quality from the front camera didn't impress me at all. The detail is weak, the image gets blurry under harsh lighting, and HDR only works sometimes or doesn't work at all. Portrait video shooting is only available in full HD, both on the front camera and the main camera module. But even at this resolution, stabilization often leaves much to be desired. On top of that, just finding the portrait mode in the menu is no easy task. It's hidden way too deep. And one more thing about the front camera, it really does have a wide angle. That's a plus for group shots, but under normal lighting the image turns out pretty pale and low in contrast, and skin tones often look yellowish. The lack of 8K video and a log profile is also Oppo shooting itself in the foot. For a device at this level, these are expected features, but they're just not here. Competitors can offer us these options even at a lower price, but Oppo, unfortunately, does not. Color reproduction across all modules isn't consistent. Sometimes skin tones look yellowish, and sometimes shots are just overexposed. The smartphone also keeps up with its closest competitor, Vivo, when it comes to lens flare while shooting in the sun. Whether you're shooting video or photos with the main lens on a bright sunny day, you'll definitely notice that flare. The placement of the cameras themselves also raises some questions. When switching between 1x and 3x, the jump in the frame is quite noticeable, and that's a downside. I was also disappointed by the placement of the ultra-wide-angle module. It sits a bit lower than the other lenses, which leads to a common problem. Your finger constantly gets in the shot, especially if you're taking pictures using the volume button. Reaching for it while holding the phone in a way that doesn't cover the lens turns out to be inconvenient. Another downside, in my opinion, is the dedicated quick shot button, which all the Chinese brands have now copied from the iPhone. Honestly, it doesn't really serve any useful purpose. It looks more decorative than functional. Plus, its placement is also somewhat unclear and inconvenient. It's positioned quite low. I'll go even further. If you're shooting in portrait mode, pressing it always shifts the phone a bit, which can lead to blurry shots. The film mode also turned out to be a cropped mode with almost no stabilization and no additional color correction. There's hardly any point in using it. Battery life isn't impressive either. With heavy use during testing, there's not as much power left at the end of the day as you'd hope. For a new type of battery with this capacity, that's a pretty average result. And this shows that the Snapdragon 8 Elite in the Oppo isn't very energy efficient, at the very least. At worst, it also has overheating issues under heavy loads. For example, during heavy stress tests, especially in 3D Mark Extreme, the smartphone noticeably overheated. According to the thermal camera, the body temperature reached 56 degrees Celsius, even though the test itself showed around 50. After such a test, using the device becomes genuinely uncomfortable. In Antutu, yes, the situation was better. There wasn't any severe overheating, but it was 3D Mark that clearly demonstrated just how hot a top-tier Snapdragon can get, especially compared to Dimensity solutions, which behave much more restrained under the same conditions. And the smartphone has a minimum of features that are actually useful for us. Most options either don't work or require Chinese apps. The most noticeable one is object removal in photos, but the algorithm is still too rough to use it properly. And then there's what I mentioned earlier, the mobile network internet speed. This is honestly a strange situation because I'd never encountered anything like it before. For downloads, the smartphone shows good numbers, and overall there are no complaints. But unloading is a real disaster. I tried switching servers several times, checked the internet speed multiple times, but the result was always about the same. Maybe Oppo really is missing a certain band that my carrier specifically needs here in Spain. Unfortunately, I can't say for sure. So if any of you have a Find X8 Ultra, please let me know in the comments how things are going for you with this issue. Important information, this smartphone is strictly the Chinese version. There is no global version. This brings a lot of nuance nuances with it. For example, there are no Google services out of the box. You'll have to install them yourself, and it doesn't always work reliably. Android Auto is also questionable. There's no guarantee it will work. Yes, for example, Vivo is already making Chinese versions of their smartphones with Android Auto, but Oppo and Vivo are two different companies now, no longer part of the BBK group, so you shouldn't count on it too much. Watches on Wear OS are a separate issue. Connecting them is like playing the lottery. For example, I couldn't get Xiaomi watches on Wear OS to work with any Chinese smartphone at all, whether it was Vivo, Huawei, or Oppo. There's really no guarantee that even basic functions will work right away, or work at all. So if you're not ready to mess around with settings, install services manually, and adapt everything yourself, you should definitely look at global models right away. You'll really save yourself both time and nerves. The Oppo Find X8 Ultra is definitely not a perfect smartphone. Oppo wanted to give us a universal set of cameras, but almost every module and every mode has its own flaws. They wanted to make both the body and the interface as close to the iPhone as possible, but they copied both its positive and negative qualities. Yes, it has a gorgeous display, is convenient for everyday use, and overall takes quality photos. Maybe we should wait for some updates and the smartphone will really improve. But for now, there are just too many questions for the price they're asking. Competitors are offering more for a lower price. So Oppo has two options: either lower the price or improve the phone with software updates so people understand what they're paying for. Ideally, they would do both, of course, but that's unlikely to happen. Although, the price for it is already starting to go down. For example, I bought this smartphone in the 16/512GB version right at the launch for 1,037 euros on a Chinese website, with delivery to Spain. Honestly, if cameras aren't the most important thing for you, you can easily go for the OnePlus 13 instead of the Oppo Find X8 Ultra. It's released for the global market. It also has an awesome display, interface, haptics, and performance. Basically, OnePlus is a subsidiary of Oppo, so you won't really notice much difference in the interface. The only real difference between these smartphones is where they're sold. But if you're willing to tweak the phone yourself, then Oppo is definitely the more preferable choice overall. After all, while OnePlus is the flagship within its own company's lineup, Oppo aims to be the ultimate flagship in the entire industry. Even now, it's already a very solid and well-rounded device in every aspect, with the hope that it will only get better in the future. I'd call this smartphone a success, but just that. But what do you think? What kind of impression did this smartphone leave on you? Is it really worth the money? And does it truly deserve your attention? I suggest you write in the comments today whether you would get the Oppo Find X8 Ultra for yourself or not, and why. And if you already own one, let us know why you bought it and whether your experience is different from mine. And if you found this video helpful, give it a like, share it with your friends, and hit the bell so you don't miss future reviews and comparisons. Bye-bye.